Pilipinas is different from ikaw muna, kandidato.
Tinanggihan ng mga presidential votes, pati yung aming kampo. Not your way, but campaign manager Leni Robredo came out with a statement that he rejects the call for unification.
DLSU political science professor Julio Tejanqui says that at this stage of the campaign, the optimal choice for presidential candidates with low survey numbers would be to withdraw and to endorse one of the top two candidates.
Everyone thinks that they can win and do it on their own. But you know, the optimal solution really here at this point in time is for the non-competitive candidates to support whoever is more competitive.
With less than a month to Election Day, presidential candidates continue to campaign to raise their chances of gaining votes. But who will emerge as having the fastest trajectory? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay and kasama po natin online from Manila, Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, and from Quezon City, Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5. Mamaya po sasamahan din tayo ni Ed Lingao. Chiefs, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Diretso na natin. This is going to be our last episode before we go on Holy Week break. But before we get to our guest, Ami, ano bang mga balitang tinitingnan natin?
Well, medyo maganda siguro sa mga vulnerable sectors. In-approve na daw ng Food and Drug Administration yung second booster for seniors and dyan nga, yung immune-compromised.
And in the meantime, of course, ang malaking konteksto sa lahat natin ngayon is people trying to get home to their provinces, to their families. Of course, kanina nga pinag-uusapan namin ni Gretchen sa Big Story. People, of course, have not gone home in 2 years practically. Walang mga family reunion, pero what that means is a lot of people right now are stranded along EDSA, and a lot of people are also still stuck in the terminals.
Station, Pitix, punong-puno ng tao. Punong-puno.
Grabe, record 100,000 plus no?
Yung foot traffic, kanina nga pinapakita natin yung mga eksena. Hopefully naman maayos. But okay, so ngayon, like we were saying, sulitin natin itong show natin. It's our last show. Welcome back to the Chiefs, Mr. Barayo.
Good evening, sir.
Lucy, Ami, Robbie, nice to be with you on this Holy Week special, shall we say.
Sa inyo po ba?
Which has nothing to do with Holy Week.
sa mga kandidato ba po may break?
Actually, medyo. Pero bukas may mga meetings pa kami, although we will not be doing any campaigning, no. But we have some meetings tomorrow and again on Saturday, no. Before we resume sorties or campaign sorties on Monday after Easter.
Okay, speaking of those meetings, itong linggong to, some of the stories that made headlines, some former group supporting Isko Moreno shifting to Leni Robredo. Pero in fairness, kanina binalita rin namin sa Big Story, for groups formerly supporting Bongbong Marcos now shifting their support to Isko Moreno. So on balance, what does that mean for the campaign of Isko Moreno?
Well, politics kasi natin, syempre you win some, you lose some, no? I mean, ganun talaga. It just so happens, of course, that the lead defector, so to speak, former Undersecretary Tim Orbos is a well-known figure, no? So medyo, syempre, his statements about trying to forge unity, no, among the candidates arrayed against Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was, of course, news for a few days.
Well,
Yes, but sige, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yan
Ami.
ang sinasabi ngayon ng ibang analyst, no? seeing all these realignments, saka yung latest survey nga, dapat daw isip-isipin na ng mga ibang kandidato na maybe it's better to rally against a single candidate para lang matalo yung frontrunner kasi he has more than half no, sa survey. It's a commanding lead. What do you think of those suggestions?
Well, unang-una, Ami, those surveys, the survey you're referring to, the Pulse Asia survey, was done in the middle of March. A lot of things, a lot of issues have erupted in the national consciousness between then and now. We're already 1 month since then. Number two, if there were sincere and serious talks about unity, they should have been made before the filing of certificates of candidacy. Napakahirap, hindi lamang para sa isang kandidatong katulad ni Mayor Isko Moreno, but I guess lahat ng ibang other candidates, Senator Ping Lacson, Senator Manny Pacquiao, Calyodi, and other candidates, no, to back out from the race at this point in time, no. Masyado ng marami ang na-involve, na-engage nilang mga supporters, so it's not that easy. At pangatlo, dapat isipin ng mga so-called political analysts kung the withdrawal allegedly for the sake of unity of a particular candidate will result in votes going to a certain candidate or whether it would just migrate to the leading candidate. No? Surveys, our own internal surveys, and even surveys made by Pulse Asia, Tangere, and others state that Isko Moreno is the second choice among all comers, no? Whether it's the voters of Mr. Marcos, the voters of Vice President Leni, siya yung second choice. No? Pangalawa, the other result that you can glean from the surveys is that yung mga botante ni Vice President Leni, kung halimbawang magpalit sila ng isip before May 9, ang pupuntahan ng mga botong yon ay si Isko Moreno. Ganun din kung karamihan ng mga botante na ngayon ay kay Bongbong Marcos na maaari pang magpalit ng isip, ang lilipatan si Isko Moreno. So given those data and those findings, no, parang napakahirap naman na ipagpilitan ng ilang sektor o ilang tao na paatrasin si Mayor Isko Moreno in favor of the candidate of their choice, which is Vice President Leni Robredo.
What about the One Cebu endorsement? How much are you affected by that? Kasi alam namin na matagal niligawan din ni Isko ang Cebu, no?
Yes,
How is he taking that?
Malaking bagay ang Cebu. The province is about 2.7 million votes, I think. 2.5 to 2.7 million votes. And that is what One Cebu represents. So iba yung Cebu City, that is about 600,000 votes, I think. So, yeah, malaking bagay 'yon, pero hindi rin naman monolithic ang mga ang mga boto diyan, ano. The fact that Congressman Pablo John Garcia, the Secretary General before he resigned yesterday, or I mean temporary, I don't know if it's a resignation as Secretary General, remains with Isko Moreno. And we are talking with 1 or 2 more congressmen. Also, well, one is from One Cebu, the other is not from One Cebu. No, to think in terms of supporting Isko. No, aside from mayors in Cebu. No, hindi naman monolithic yung boto na yan. No, although of course it is a big plus to whoever they endorsed.
Is he still hoping to get President Duterte's endorsement, even though the president has said that he will not endorse anybody? But
No, I
how
think
does he feel about that?
I think it is best to let that matter rest. No, the president has already said he's going to remain neutral, other than supporting, of course, his daughter, Mayor Inday Sara Duterte, for vice president. I think we might as well take that as his final word on the matter. No?
Mr. Banay,
And what
total
about
nabanggit
nung
niyo po
mga-
yung
Ay,
total na
sorry.
total nabanggit niyo po yung internal surveys. I'm just curious if you'd care to share other insights that you're seeing. In particular, itong the issues to which the frontrunner Bongbong Marcos might still be vulnerable, and in particular pa itong estate taxes issue. What are you seeing in the issues that the other campaigns are still hoping kahit papaano kumagat against Bongbong Marcos?
Well, we're seeing a drop in Bongbong Marcos's numbers compared to the March 15 to 18 survey of Pulse Asia, which is still registered in the 50s, no? To somewhere in the mid-40s, no? 48, merong 48, merong 46, no? And a rise in ISCO from what Pulse Asia said in March to an April 5 survey by Tangere, which gives it 24 versus Vice President Leni's 21. So it's still, well, admittedly, the difference between 48 and 24 is still 24 points. But all you have to do is whittle that down by 13 points and get that 13 points, and you're already up by 1 point, no? Because it's a plus-minus game, no? So ganon. So the way I look at it, it is best for us to just wait for the results of May 9. I do not know if there will be public surveys prior to May 9 or whether we will just have to wait for the exit polls.
Meron pa yata no?
Meron pang isa.
Toward the end of April.
Sabi ng Pulse Asia. Pero balikan ko lang yung unity talks. Kasi you're talking about the possibility, which is true, na baka nga yung pag nag-withdraw si Isko, si Mayor Isko, pupunta kay Bongbong Marcos din. On the other hand, sabi naman nung ibang nagtutulak niyang move na yan, kung i-endorse naman ni Mayor Isko si BP Leni, di makukuha naman niya, mapipigilan naman siguro niya yung karamihan sa supporters niya from moving to Bongbong Marcos' camp. Ano naman ang masasabi niyo dyan sa ganyang analysis?
Alam mo, Ami, yung mga ganyan kasi, depende yan sa level of trust. Kung talagang gusto ng ganyang mga unity na merong endorsement, no, hindi mo pa dadaanin sa gagawa ka ng eksena sa media publicly. No? Normally, yung mga ganyan, kung gusto mo magkaroon man ng effect, you do it privately, di ba? Makipag-usap ka, no? So and hopefully you get the assent of yung nililigawan mong umatras, and he will endorse. But doing it publicly, no, and through surrogates at that, lalong lumalalim yung, I mean, I'm speaking here not as Isko's campaign strategist. I'm speaking here as somebody who has seen a lot of these negotiations through several candidacies, no. Pag ganun kasi nangyayari, walang mangyayari, lalong lalalim lang
Is that what's happening? Is that a factor? Is that one of the things is that one of the dynamics with Ping Lacson? Because yesterday, that's what I asked one of our guests, diba? Is there a right way and what's the wrong way of trying to forge or trying to convince anyone to back out and endorse somebody else? Is this a dynamic you think that's involved with the talk swirling around not Isko Moreno but Ping Lacson, for example?
Well, I do not know about the talks between the camp of Senator Lacson and Vice President Leni, if ever there are any. But in 2004, if you recall, there was a multi-cornered fight as well. But the leading protagonists were the late Fernando Po Jr. and President, and then incumbent President GMA, Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo. And doing number 3 was Senator Ping Lacson at the time. Again, no, well, there were privately initiated talks, no, not done in public, no. And however, they did not pan out properly, no, for one reason or another, hindi nagkasundo-sundo. So eventually what happened was it was a very close fight between President GMA and FPJ. And then of course there was the Hello Garci incident,
Scandal. Yeah.
which created a lot of doubt on the outcome of that election. No? So depende yan eh. If I go back even further, no, to further in history, so to speak, no, na nahalatang matanda na ako. Yung kay Cory Aquino at kay Doy
Doy
Laurel.
Laurel, yeah.
Yeah.
I was a very young, political technician at that time, and I was working with Tito Doy, no, Vice President. Well, then not yet Vice President Salvador Laurel, no. Yun naman, nagkaroon ng kasunduan because the times called for it, especially since we were fighting a dictatorship, no, which was a well-entrenched dictatorship. Nagkasundo, pero yung terms of agreement hindi naman sinunod after nanalo na yung tandem or naiupo na yung tandem by way of the EDSA People Power Revolt, no. So, yung mga ganyang dynamics na alam yan ng mga kandidato, alam yan ng mga ano. So, yung level of trust ng isa't isa sa bawat isa ay napakahalaga sa mga ganyang usapin.
Alam mo, nabanggit mo yung, yung panahon nila, Cory. Sila, Tim Orbos and company mo, feel that the election this time is precisely about making sure that a Marcos does not return to power, which is the reason they cited nga for supporting Leni. No? I wonder how much does Isko feel about that goal or that objective or even that possible outcome?
Hindi kasi ganon ang pananaw ni Isko. It's not a fight between, the yellows and now pinks and the reds, so whatever the colors they may represent. No, it's not a fight between families. It's not a fight between factions. No, we've gone beyond that. No, we've had 30 or more years since 1986, since the EDSA revolt, no, which toppled the dictatorship. The circumstances these days are different. No, we have a very big crisis ahead of us. No, a crisis of jobs and livelihood, of high prices, so many economic problems. No, that we cannot. Where it's not a case of fighting a dictator. No, parang iba naman yung sitwasyon ngayon eh, no? It's a case of, as Isko keeps repeating, he is in this contest because he wants to alleviate the plight of the people, especially the poor and the marginalized in this country. So it's not about Marcos Sr., Marcos Redu, which is Marcos Jr., or Leni Robredo, who represents to a certain extent, no, the faction allied with the Aquino family. Hindi ganun ang pananaw niya dito, hindi ganun ang aming pananaw.
Okay, Mr. Banayo, we've run out of time for this segment. Maraming salamat po, and we do wish you and everybody in the campaign a blessed Holy Week.
Maraming salamat and happy
Salamat, sir.
Happy Easter, Mr. Banayo.
We'll take a break. Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back, the Chiefs. Now joining us, former presidential spokesperson, Attorney Edwin Lacerda. Good evening and welcome back, the Chiefs, Mr. Lacerda.
Good evening.
Hi, Edwin.
Hi, Robbie. Hi, Lucy. Hi, Ami. Thanks for having me.
Of
Good to see you again.
And thank you for giving us this time, notwithstanding the what must be hectic preparations for everyone heading into the Holy Week. I don't know if you have an official designation in the Leni Robredo campaign. Nonetheless, we presume that
I'm a volunteer, but heavily involved. No, I'm heavily involved in the campaign, but pretty much aware of what goes on in the campaign.
Okay, in that context, a very heavily involved volunteer with some access to what's happening within the campaign. How would you assess it? Home stretch, and we're going into a slow period just for a few days, but when everybody comes back, it's going to be very helter-skelter. I mean, how would you assess the mood and the trends for the campaign?
You know, there are a number of firsts in this particular campaign. By this time, normally, if having seen the survey where the frontrunner has a huge lead, most people would have already conceded. But what you're seeing right now is that there's a momentum, there's a surge, not only among the people, but also among politicians, especially among politicians where they are more realistic, they're more pragmatic, they count the votes. And so in spite of that, you see transition shifting from other candidates to the camp of Leni. And then you see the youth vote going out, doing a national house-to-house campaign. A house-to-house campaign is almost always a must in the local politics. But you see here the national there's a national house-to-house campaign, campaigning primarily for Leni and seeking for conversion among the voters. No? So there's many firsts, and this is purely a fantastic and a overwhelming volunteer campaign being done on the grassroots level. So, and you see also the rallies are huge, never seen before, except maybe perhaps in Cory's time in the Laban ng Bayan rally when she lost the election. Everybody went to Luneta. That was really huge. But since then, all the rallies have, by and large, been typical and traditional, so many thousands. But here you see huge numbers going into specific rallies. Every time she holds a rally, you see a huge number of attendees to the rally. So that's something also phenomenal. I think that has also been noticed by media practitioners, by you guys. So there's something new that's going on. There's a phenomenon that's happening.
Organic ba yun, Edwin? What's that something that just, swelled up from the ground, kumbaga, and then you decided to employ it as a campaign strategy? How much of it was strategy and how much of it was, organic?
Well, the first one that really came out with a huge campaign was really from Iloilo City Mayor Jerry Treñas. And you saw that that was, I think, 40,000. That was the first huge rally. And then subsequently that people felt, kung kaya nilang maglabas ng ganyang klaseng karaming tao, then we in our local jurisdictions can also do that. The other reason why it's organic, and which eventually became a strategy of the campaign, was the accusation na binayaran niya. But Leni doesn't have money. The campaign does not have the bala to do that. No, if you're looking at the other candidates, you've seen videos giving out 500 pesos. How can you give 500 pesos to over 200,000 people? That's simply impossible. Not to mention the fact that Leni does not have the financial resources to do that, and it's against her. It's anathema to her principles to do that. So it's really organic. And when people saw, hey, there is logic here. There's strength in numbers. And which, by the way, it's now being manifested in the surveys where huge rallies are held. There is a rise in the numbers in the jurisdictions polled. So you see that, and it has become very, very organic. And not all are organized by the central campaign. A lot of them, for instance, are organized on the local side. So that's where it happened. They coordinate them with the central, and you've seen all these rallies, huge rallies. For instance, you've never seen a rally as big as Pasig in NCR at the time, unless it is a People Power 1 or People Power 2. But other than that, this is really very, very organic in so far as the people coming
Sir,
out.
there's no question that the numbers are much better than the previous surveys. Pero in the end, you still have a little more than 4 weeks left. Do you have anything that you can hold on to show that there is still enough time to turn the tide?
The question is really time. It's no doubt the question is really time. Can you do, for instance, di ba ang kwento dyan is kung meron pang isang buwan, aabot yan. But the challenge right now, we're limited by until the 7th of May
Yes.
to launch that, and therefore, everybody's going out, and one of the key strengths of this campaign are the volunteers going out on the grassroots level, doing a house-to-house campaign and talking to each and every voter in the district where they are located. And they are multipliers, the force multipliers itong mga nasa grassroots, instead of the central doing all the spending, all the TARPs, all the people. Lahat na yan. This has become force multipliers all over the country. And you just have to push them a little, like what Leni was saying, I need your help, kailangan namin ang tulong nyo para ipanalo na natin to. And therefore, everybody has responded mightily and very vocally and vociferously to the call of Leni to help her in the campaign. Ang sinasabi talaga ng kampanya, laban natin lahat ito eh.
Yes,
And
sir.
so that is being manifested now by the grassroots supporters doing a house-to-house. And that's something that's very, very new.
But sir, the other question, sir, is the other question is if the house has been working, why wasn't it done earlier? I know that's medyo parang backseat driver ang dating eh. Pero in hindsight, if it is working, then why wasn't it done a little bit earlier, a month before?
Well, I think they've seen that also. I think that's part of the strategy that they were looking at. And I agree with you, maybe it should have been done earlier, but this was a time wherein you would recognize the fact that Leni was really coming out from a lot of disinformation, and when the rallies showed that there's a spontaneous support for her, then let's go down to instead of just attending the rallies, let's go down to the level where the voters are. And you saw that, and by the way, it's not really so much as last month lang. You've seen that already being done in the rallies as early as Iloilo City, for instance. After the rallies, the Ilonggos would go to their places and just do house-to-house. Dito, mas malakas lang talaga, mas maingay, because Leni Robredo just decided, just launched it in a way that she started the whole campaign telling us, all the supporters, let's do house-to-house. But that is already being done early on. In fact, as early as in the aftermath of the Iloilo City rally, there have been people doing house-to-house. And people recognize the difficulties because you have to counter the disinformation. And that's why there is, in my belief, and this is my own personal opinion, I was telling them, let's go after the Leni soft voters. Let's not go after the bongbong non-voters. Number one, the pool is bigger. It's much wider than just focusing on the soft voters of bongbong. The pool of soft non-voters of Leni is bigger. And you've seen that there's been a lot of conversion. The numbers are up, meaning to say people are open. And that encompasses not just the voters of bongbong, but also the supporters of Isko, Mani, and Ping. But obviously, we have to really go through bongbong to win the election because he has the most number of votes. But that's a reality. And by going after the Leni soft non-voters, you shift the messaging to positive. You don't go house to house pulling teeth with other candidates. Bakit hindi siya? Bakit si ganito? Why shouldn't we vote? Instead of telling why shouldn't we vote, let's talk about the positive messaging of Leni, which is she's basically and fundamentally the most qualified candidate in this pool of candidates that we have right now.
Well, apart from the big rallies and the house-to-house, and dyan na nga yung messaging ninyo, of course, it will help kung merong pang mga candidates who will actually back you, no? Buhay pa ba yun? Are you still pinning your hopes on that?
In terms of the politicians?
Candidates withdrawing or supporting her?
That comes naturally in like what si July Tihanki was saying, that it comes naturally with the realization, with the recognition that Filipinos would tend to really go after someone who is at the very least first or second. You may pag-asang manalo. That's the natural tendency. Eh. Obviously, other candidates would refuse. I mean, the opponents of Vice President Leni have made the stand already. At the very least, Ping and Isko have said that they're not open to it. But then again, there are also discussions among their supporters, but not only that, the local politicians also. Like I said, this is a new phenomenon where the local politicians are still turning to Leni, notwithstanding the gap that we're seeing in the surveys. So what does it tell you? There's something cooking there that we are not, there's something going on around in the local jurisdictions that were there, the local politicians there. If for instance, PD Barzaga of Cavite, he's the head of NUP, notwithstanding the endorsement by NUP of Bongbong Marcos, still endorsed Leni. And other reasons are more political than strategic. For instance, in Davao, you know why they're going for Leni. But these are really reasons why that will help. And it really reinforces the old adage that politics is addition. Certainly we'd welcome anyone who would come to the fold. And that's something that will help Leni in the final stretch.
Okay, Mr. Laceda, unfortunately, we only have that much time to be with you on this evening. Pero maraming salamat po.
Salamat din po.
Salamat.
Happy
Thank you,
Easter po.
Happy Easter too.
Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back.
Welcome back to the Chiefs on One News. And now joining us is MMDA General Manager Frisco San Juan Jr. Sir, magandang gabi and welcome to the Chiefs.
Good evening po.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Magandang gabi po. Magandang gabi
po.
po sa ating lahat.
Sir, yung panukala na idalawang araw na itong number coding sa EDSA, ito ba'y tuloy na sa Mayo o wala nang tawad?
Malamang po, matuloy na po sa Mayo. After the Metro Manila Council passes the resolution by around next week po, mag-meet ang mga Metro Manila mayors.
What will be the what will be the determinant or what will make you decide to push through with it or to postpone it? Kumbaga, what will be the clincher?
The sentiments of the mayors po, they might come up with a few suggestions whether to delay it or go ahead on as scheduled po.
Unanimous ba yung suporta ng mayors or did anyone raise concerns sa pag-implement niya?
We were not able to sound them off yet. No, by next week po, we will be meeting them formally na para everything will be clear from all of the mayors po.
Bukod pa po sa number coding, ano pa pong mga pagbabago ang gagawin ninyo as far as siguro flow of traffic in certain areas or even yung mga bus po, yung carousel, ano pa pong mga pagbabagong maasahan?
Meron na po tayong pinairal na pagbabago. Yun pong bus stops along EDSA, for example, hindi na po pwede. Nasa side street na po ang mga bus stops, mga entry point ng mga sa bus terminals. Wala na po sa EDSA para mas maluwag po ang EDSA dahil malaking lugar ang na-occupy ng mga bus pagka humihinto sila along EDSA.
Pero papayagan na po ba silang pumasok ulit yung mga provincial bus na kasi yun yung issue rin nun eh. Di ho ba?
Yung provincial buses pinapayagan na po during May window hours po sila ng pagpasok.
Okay.
From 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. nakakapasok po sila ng EDSA. But hindi rin po pwedeng nakakapasok ng Metro Manila but not through EDSA.
Yes. Yeah. So yung mga terminal nila, hindi pa rin nila pwedeng gamitin. Ganun ho ba? Kasi ang dami mga terminal sa EDSA ng mga provincial buses.
Yung iba pong terminals nagagamit na kasi meron silang entry point sa other street, sa side street.
I see. Sa likod.
For example,
po.
sir, yung sa Cubao, maraming bus terminals doon. I think the buses there pass through the side streets to get to their terminals sa EDSA. So, those are still operational as well as yung mga sa Pasay City.
Opo, ganun po yun. Matagal na pong operational yun.
Sir,
Kaya lang,
balikan ko lang po yung sa coding, no? Para kasi based on the results, ako mismo medyo nalilito ko eh. I mean, could we recap that? Kasi it's not as simple, tama po ba pagkakaintindi ko? It is not as simple as yung nakagawin natin na 1 to Monday, 2, 3, 4 sa Tuesday, and so on and so forth. Di ba? Parang tigda 2 araw bawat isa pagkatapos hindi necessarily magkakasunod yung araw nyo. I mean, could you recap for us na madaling matandaan?
sige po. Ang suggestion ko lang po, unang-una tandaan lang ninyo yung numbers na nakakasakop sa inyo.
Okay.
Para hindi po mahirap ma-memorize. Pagka Lunes, 1, 2, 3, 4, bawal po. Pag Martes, 5, 6, 7, 8, bawal po. Pag Miyerkules, 9, 0, 1, 2. At pag Huwebes, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pag Biyernes, 7, 8, 9, 0. Ang oras po ay mula alas 5 ng hapon hanggang alas 7 ng gabi. Kaya kung sa ngayon po, ang pinapatupad natin ay mula alas 5 ng hapon hanggang alas 8, may 3 oras kayo sa isang linggo na maghihintay kung kayo ay nasa sakop ng ban para makalabas o makauwi.
Okay.
Dito po, 2 oras kayo na maghihintay, mas maigsi, pero 2 beses sa isang linggo.
Okay.
In effect, nadagdagan lang tayo ng 1 oras na sa total, no, kung buong linggo ang kikwentahin natin. Pero sa paghihintay naman po, ay maiksi na ang paghihintay na gagawin ninyo. Siguro mas meron na tayong maaaring gawin sa 2 oras na paghihintay na yan. At wala pong isasagawa na pagbabawal sa umaga. Wala pa rin po.
Okay, Ami, pop quiz.
Well, how much
Ami,
do
anong
you-
bawal sa Thursday?
Hindi natin na-memorize.
Pinagdaan ko lang yung
Hindi natin alam kung tayo ng graphics yan eh. Ako, ang tanong ko, sir, yan ba paano nyo kinakalkula yan? I mean, how much is traffic expected to get reduced by this new number coding scheme? And how exactly do you compute that?
Ganito po yon, yung ating pong dating pinaiiral nung pre-pandemic ay 2 numbers lang, ano? Pag Monday, 1 and 2. No, pag Tuesday, 3 and 4, etc. At ang effect po nun, kada araw ay 20%.
Yeah. 1 out of every
The
5 days.
reduction.
Yes.
Sa reduction sa private vehicles. Dito po sa bago ay 40% ang mababawas sa volume ng mga private vehicles po. At kinuwenta po namin na kung dati ay 40,000 ang nababawal natin sa isang araw, dito sa bagong panukala na proposal ng MMDA, 80,000 vehicles po ang mawawala sa kalsada at magkakaroon ng pagbilis ng daloy ng trapiko sa oras ng pag-uwi mula alas 5 ng hapon.
Yes, sir.
Bibilis
Pero, sir,
po.
Sa lahat po ba yan? Sa lahat po ba yan ng mga lungsod, hindi lang EDSA?
Tama po.
Paano po?
Sa lahat po. Buong Metro Manila po.
pero sir, magbabawasan ng 80,000 vehicles yung 5 to 7 window. Pero yung buong umaga, siksika naman tayong lahat sa kalsada. Hindi ho ba? So I'm wondering lang if you've taken that into consideration na okay lang ba yung umaga na walang coding pero lahat sa gabi maluwag.
Opo.
Malilate sila.
Base po sa karanasan nitong mga nakarang araw, nung naglagay tayo ng coding na simula nung magluwag ang atin pong mga alert levels, ang 5 to 8 ng gabi ang matrapiko at sa umaga napansin namin na maluwag naman, mabilis nakakarating. Maganda yung tanong ninyo sapagkat pagdating ng pasukan ay baka po hindi na ganoon ang maging sitwasyon.
Oo nga.
Dahil sa pasukan, marami sa umaga ang lumalabas, naghahatid sa mga eskwelahan. Kaya yan
So
po ay
magbabago yan.
pinag-aaralan pa po namin, baka sakaling pagpasukan na, ipatupad na rin yung pati sa umaga.
Pero linawin lang po natin ulit, does it also only apply to main roads kung saan MMDA nagpapatakbo? Or does it also apply to mga back roads, particularly mga pasikot-sikot sa mga LGU?
And the Republic of Makati.
Buong Metro Manila po ang aming panukala.
Buong Metro
Lahat ng
Manila.
kalye, pati yung maliliit.
Tama po.
Okay. O
Eh,
sige,
sir,
yun namang Holy Week ngayon. Medyo magulo ngayong Holy Week. Ano naman po mga preparasyon ng MMDA? Bukas, ngayon nag-umpisa na yung mga rush pabalik eh. Meron ba kayong mga special measures for the rest of the week?
Meron na pong pinatupad na mga special measures para po makatulong sa ating mga mananakay at sa pagdaloy ng trapiko. Karagdagan pong mga traffic enforcers, for example, at mga motorcycle units para mabilis makapag-respond sa mga sitwasyon na kinakailangan ng additional na mga enforcers. At sa pakikipagtulungan po sa mga ibang ahensya, meron pong mga help desk sa mga critical areas kung saan maaaring mag-abang o magtanong ang ating mga mananakay, saan ba makakasakay sila. Maaaring hindi nila alam kung nasaan ang mga pasukan sa mga bus terminals po dahil hindi sila makakapasok along EDSA. Kaya nga meron tayong mga ganong lugar at kasama din doon sa mga lugar na may mga help desk, may mga ambulance po tayo, ambulance ng MMDA, meron po taga Red Cross, at meron ding taga PNP at mga LGUs po. Nandun po lahat ang kinakailangang tulong para sa ating mga mananakay po.
Sir, unusually heavy yung traffic ngayon as well as yung volume ng mga taong nag-aabang sa kalsada ngayong gabi. I'm not just talking about yung nandun sa carousel side na nasa inner lane ng EDSA. I'm talking about people who are already crowding the sidewalks of EDSA waiting for a ride, which is unusual kasi wala nang bus na dumadaan dun sa bangkete. Lahat nga sila nasa kaliwa na. Pero ngayon, you have people on the right side as well. Well, of course, it's the Holy Week break. Pero yun nga po, how are you addressing this? And could this happen again in the future?
Tama po yun. Kasi sa ngayon po, hindi pa po full force ang ating mga bus operators na nag-operate ng 100%. A certain percentage pa lang po ang kanilang naipalabas ngayon simula nung magbaba po ang alert level. Kailangan pa rin po nilang magdagdag at sinasaayos po nila mga sasakyan na karamihan po ay na-stuck ng matagal kaya kailangan i-recondition pang muli at yun po ang nangyari. Kaya kulang ang mga bus ngayon at pangalawa, yung nga pong sinabi natin kanina na hindi alam ng mga mananakay kung saan yung mga pasukan doon sa mga bus terminals na yan at kaya naman naiipon sila dito sa lugar ng EDSA na dati nilang inaasahan na doon ang pasukan. Kaya yung mga help desk po natin ay doon sila pwede magtanong po.
But there was an earlier problem. I don't know if it's been resolved. There was an earlier problem with the carousel kung saan hindi nababayaran yung mga operator. Of course, it's an LTFRB problem, not an MMDA problem. But of course, it does affect you and your operations as well. I'm wondering lang if number one, that's been resolved already, and number two, is that a factor here o solved na yun?
Hindi po tayo nakakaalam tungkol doon sa issue ng bayaran. Pero ang totoo po, kanina ay marami pong mga buses na pinatakbo dyan sa bus carousel natin. Ang talaga lang problema ay maraming tao at saka dahilan sa yung MRT po natin ay hindi po umaandar ngayong araw. Kaya lahat ay umaasa lang sa bus carousel. Talaga po, natambak doon sa bus carousel ang mga pasahero po.
Okay. Sige po. Well, Mr. San Juan, maraming salamat po. That's MMDA General Manager Frisco San Juan Jr. Maraming salamat po, sir.
Salamat po, sir.
Ingat po.
Ingat po.
Thank you po.
Happy
Ingat
Easter po.
tayo.
And that will be all for this edition of the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News.